Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. My name is Mick Meaners. Please follow me on Twitter at MoviesTVMad to continue the conversation. Now, we all knew that George Lucas had been betrayed by Disney a very long time ago. We know he was very public about the whole Force Awakens thing. He wasn't happy with the Force Awakens. He felt the effects and the technology hadn't been innovative enough because he feels, and I'll read out to you what Bob Iger's been saying, because it's Bob Iger's book, I think, or an interview where he's been saying this stuff at, but really, it really does confirm what we already knew, that George Lucas had been betrayed. He doesn't like Disney Star Wars. So some of the things I'm going to read out to you, like George said, he believes each Star Wars film visually should be more innovative. And basically, the other thing, this is what the fans said as well, that The Force Awakens was a rip-off of A New Hope. Now, I'm going to read all this out to you, and I hate to repeat myself before I do that, but I want to make this clear, that Bob Iger's stance is, what George didn't understand is, we wanted to make a familiar Star Wars film because the fans weren't happy with the prequels. And I kind of understand from a commercial standpoint, they wanted to bring a feel-good factor back to the Star Wars fandom, right? And I get that. But the point is, it could have had the feeling of the original Star Wars trilogy, but it didn't have to be a rip-off, and people would have been happy. Also, if you're talking about familiarity, why wasn't Han, Luke, and Leia in a scene together? Doesn't make sense. So let's read this, but let's understand this is not a big shock. The big shock is that Bob Iger is talking about this, and it seems to me he's talking about this as to say we have nothing to hide, we admit it, this is what we're doing. But this is going to become a very big problem, because I kind of started to see people getting really enthusiastic about The Rise of Skywalker. This is a setback. This is stupid. I don't know why he's done this in his book. Obviously, what's more important to him is his book. But I think what we're seeing here is that Bob Iger is very soon going to step down as head of Disney. And I think this is why he's doing it now. But something else could happen here. He could be sacked because of this. This is interesting. Let's have a look. Early on, Kathy brought JJ and Michael Arndt up to Northern California to meet with George at his ranch and talk about their ideas for the film. George immediately got upset as they began to describe the plot, and it dawned on him that we weren't using one of the stories he submitted during the negotiations. This is an absolute betrayal. The truth was, Kathy, JJ, Alan and I had discussed the direction in which the saga should go, and we all agreed that it wasn't what George had outlined. George knew we weren't contractually bound to anything, but morally you was, and that's the point. But he thought that our buying the story treatment was a tacit promise that we'd follow them, and he was disappointed that his story was being discarded. Now, this is massive. This is massive. They actually bought his stories. Why did they buy his stories? So he could never use them in any form ever. This is what kind of people they are. This is Bob Iger. Bob Iger's a very successful CEO of Disney. He's made them a lot of money. And The Force Awakens, in a way, kind of was this thing where he could say, well, you see, George, look what we've done. The fans love it. We made a lot of money. We're back. Star Wars is back. I'm right and you're wrong. But The Last Jedi and Solo proves he was wrong and George was right. Who knows Star Wars better than you and me? George. But they said the old man did the prequels. Basically, the whole point was, because so many people hated what George did with the prequels, and George was not in a good place with some of the fans. I've always loved him, and I loved all 6 of his movies. I'll be clear right now. And if you want to have it out with me, have it out with me in the comments. It's fine. Just be constructive. But not listening to the guy, not listening to Mr. Star Wars was ridiculous. And what ended up in the end happening? it ended to their impending doom. Their arrogance has destroyed any chance of Star Wars making The Force Awakens money ever again. Unless The Rise of Skywalker can do that, but I have my doubts. Anyway, there's another excerpt, and here it is. I'd been so careful since our first conversation not to mislead him in any way, and I didn't think I had now, but I could have handled it better, yes. I should have prepared him for the meeting with JJ and Michael and told him about our conversations, that we felt it was better to go in another direction. I could have talked through this with him and possibly avoided angering him by not surprising him. Now, in the first meeting with him about the future of Star Wars, George felt betrayed. And while this whole process would never have been easy for him, we'd gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start. Now, I don't have any excerpts. I don't know if George is happy with them now or not. But what this says is, you see, why is he saying this in a book or in an interview? I don't know. I think it's a book because he talked about buying Twitter and getting butthurt that everyone on Twitter was kind of trolling him and saying, don't you dare buy Twitter. Oh, it's so horrible and so nasty, and that's why we didn't buy it. Welcome to the real world, Bob Iger. Your bubble's been burst, mate. Because people don't like what you've done to the film industry. You have destroyed it. You're getting other studios to copy you because of the way you make films. That's why there's a lot of hate towards you. Because there's a very rare, real film being made that we can enjoy and call it a classic. And it's your fault. Anyway, right, what these two paragraphs say is him admitting that him, J.J. Abrams, and Kathleen Kennedy, or Kathy as he calls her, betrayed him. Now, I want you to think about who gave Kathleen Kennedy her first shot in this industry. Well, it was Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. This is a very sad indignation because I think we all felt as Star Wars fans, we were excited that Disney bought it. We were excited. Now, some people were saying when the sale happened, right, we don't want Lucas anywhere near this. But I was kind of excited and thinking, well, maybe George can work with them. Maybe George can still write and direct these movies. But that wasn't the case. Straight off the bat, J.J. Abrams was taking over. Now, I love J.J. Abrams, and I kind of thought, but you know what? He's the new age George Lucas, isn't he? Lost is like the modern day Star Wars, if you think about it. The characters, the things he created, it was amazing. So J.J. Abrams is a genius, and I thought, right, he's going to run the whole Star Wars franchise. I'm happy about that. Now, my point about The Force Awakens, I get why they did what they did. I think it's a good film because at least it sets a lot of arcs and a lot of questions. Like Lost, it gets you thinking of theories. It's exciting. But then what happens with The Last Jedi, we have this situation that J.J. Abrams isn't involved anymore. He's not running this. It's just a one-time deal. I think Bad Robot was still involved, but his mind, he had nothing to do with The Last Jedi. And that's nuts. You set up all these threads, all these arcs, and then you go, right, I'm not doing the next film. I'm too busy making money for Bad Robot. That's the problem, and that's the issue I have with JJ. He should have done all 3 films, and I just don't understand. So whose fault is this? Who led this betrayal of George Lucas? Was it J.J. Abrams? Did J.J. Abrams really sit there, an intelligent man, and say, do you know what? George has got a great 7, 8 and 9 here, a great 7, 8 and 9. But we're not going to take any notice. No. I don't believe for 1 minute, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm being stupid, maybe if JJ watches this video, which he won't, he'll be laughing his socks off, I've really got him fooled, haven't I? I believe this is what Disney wanted. Disney wanted to have a feel-good factor, and this is why The Force Awakens happened. And J.J. Abrams really had no say in the matter. But J.J. Abrams did have a say in threading some interesting arcs, which is really good. I think that's the greatest aspect of The Force Awakens. It made you excited again. And you thought, oh, who's Rey connected to? Is it this one? Is it that one? Oh, who's Finn? Is Finn anything to do? Is he an ancestor of Samuel L. Jackson's character? And you were thinking all the time. And it was really, really, really exciting. Rey was awesome in the first film. And I thought Daisy was awesome in the first film. Daisy's a great actor, and she did a great job in The Last Jedi, even if we don't like what they did with her. Now, the idea of Luke training her was awesome, but let's get back to the betrayal of George Lucas. I'm gonna set this up for a finale of this video and say this is something we always knew. I don't really know what motivated George to sell to Disney. He obviously trusted them. I think what comes from this is how naive George was. George trusted them. Kathleen Kennedy assured him she would protect his legacy, and she didn't. Bob Iger promised, obviously to George, Bob Iger promised to do his 7, 8 and 9, or at least put in his story threads, and he didn't. Of course you're going to assume that. If you don't know how it all works, right, because George is obviously a businessman, he formed and ran Lucasfilm for many years, but maybe George is an old-fashioned, nice guy. And maybe George wasn't successful by betraying people, yeah? Maybe he fell out with some people, But at the end of the day, George was naive. George sold to Disney because he felt Disney are for families. I can trust them to keep Star Wars family, but to do what I did with it. But that's not what they had planned. Star Wars to them was money, was theme parks, and $2 billion a movie. That's why they were going to do a movie every year. This is Star Wars. $2 billion a year on one film? You've got to be joking, and you toys. And then one year you'd have a saga story. The next year you'd have a Star Wars story. It was actually a great idea. And Rogue One was okay. It's not a terrible movie. It's not a memorable movie for me. None of the Disney Star Wars films even compare or can even compete with George's vision, with George's 6 movies, whether you like the prequels or not. I've said this before. Prequels are really hard to do, really, because it's the story before the story that you love. It's the characters before the characters that you love. It's very difficult, but George wanted to complete his story. And what a shame that fans drove him to sell it, because it was always my dream for George to write and direct the last 3 chapters of this saga. And we never got that, and we're never going to get that. But why? Why has Iger come out and spoke now? My guess is that George Lucas very soon will either have an interview or release a book himself. And he wants to put his side of the story before George does.